curiosity, growth mindset are all the sort of things that you hear about. I mean, practically, how do you demonstrate that to me as a hiring manager? Well, talk to me about how you're learning, and don't just necessarily talk to me about product learning, by the way. I'm really interested in skills that you've developed outside of your professional life. There's going to be people right now that will hate me because this seems so incredibly obvious, but it still surprises me time and time again. You've got to learn about the company. Somebody who can, influence, manage, or coordinate. Those are skills that transcends your professional life. So I would love to see more people do that for sure.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Product Lens with myself, and today I'm joined by the lovely Ben Carter.
Hey Ethan, thank you very much. I've not been described as lovely before, but I'll take it.
There you go. Look, it'd be really good to, briefly jump into your career, your past, your history and stuff before we jump into the topic of today's discussion.
Yeah, sure. So hello everyone, for any of you out there listening, my name is Ben Carter. I've been doing product roles for about 20 years now, and I've been in leadership positions for about 10. Started off in startups actually a long time ago, making games of all things, originally gaming games and then onto mobile games and a bits of other startups. And my career has progressed since then, having leadership roles at places like Pearson, Hive, Simply Business, and most recently I ran the digital product function at IG, the global trading platform.
Yeah, nice, cool. Well, look, today's discussion is going to be about the market in general, largely specific to product, but we'll probably touch on sort of what the the market looks like in general, so across engineering, design, etc. as well. That being said, let's jump right in. My first question for you, and probably something that I can add some value to as well, is what is your take on the market right now? What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, of all the things you could have got me in to talk about, Ethan, the market is a pretty tough one. And I think maybe we owe it to the listeners just to set expectation here. I'm a regular guy that has been a hiring manager for many years, and I've also recently been a job seeker, but I don't have any quick wins out there. I don't have any sort of must-dos. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of sick about content on LinkedIn saying if you do this and you do that, then you'll get a job and stuff. It's not what people want to hear. But I can, as you say, give you feedback about the market. So, at the risk of stating the absolute obvious, it's tough out there, right? And I think that whether you're a job seeker or not, you probably hear that. I mean, I don't think I'm not part of any organisation, any meetup, any WhatsApp group, even friends I have in the profession where this hasn't come up. So I think we all understand it. It's particularly tough. It's not just tough with product. I think that's probably a good point to make. I think a lot of product people tend to think about it's all about them and their industry. Absolutely, it's tough, but we're not the only ones, and it's particularly tough at senior product professionals as well. So yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I'm guessing you know this more than anybody, right?
Yeah, and I guess it's important to also distinguish, like you said, the leadership versus sort of mid-weight ICs, etc. as well.
Yeah.
It's a different market. It's not all doom and gloom for sure, which I'm sure you'd agree with. There are a lot of positives out there. The market is a lot better than what it was. If we look at 2022, for example, the wake of extreme hiring, over hiring in some places, and then the layoffs that followed in 2023. This year, from the start of the year, was a massive improvement. We at Wave probably saw 2 to 3 times as many live roles across product engineering and design in January 2024 than we did in 2023. So it was a significant improvement, but the market is still below where we'd like it to be for a number of different reasons. I think one of the key things, and something that probably people have seen quite a lot of, and we'll come on to shortly, is niche positions.
Yeah.
Which I think we're touching on shortly.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think it's dive into that more. Cool. All right. Fine. What, as someone who's obviously hired a lot of product people in the past, obviously you've had some large product teams under your belt. What are some core skills or qualities that you prioritise most when building a product team?
Just on that positivity point, it's great to hear, by the way. I think that can be some cynicism out there about, I'm told that things are getting better. Yeah. But again, regular guy, I'm hearing the same things as well. Yeah. There are more people getting jobs. So I share your positivity. So I think that's really good to hear. Now, in terms of, as a hiring manager, what things did I actively seek? What did I really value? I mean, I think The first things first is that our profession is quite subjective at times. So, I had to hire relevant to the teams and the experience that I needed. And I think that's just a really key point just to get there. If the team was perhaps more strategic in nature, that would be something I would look for, a bias in that. If it was more about execution, then I'd look that way. I mean, I always have a bias towards attitude. I think that great product people consistently are just brilliant problem solvers, great at working with lots of different people, great at understanding the needs of the customer, and then working with multiple parties to solve that need. So that sort of attitude and how you approach those things, for me, is really, really important. Look, I think experience and developing techniques is great, but I can teach that. The clue, I think, is probably in the title. You talked about, in hiring for the team, somebody who gets on with the team, someone's got proven experience working with different people. Different people have different takes on this, but I passionately believe that product is a team sport. So those people who are good at working, being part of a team, I think are absolutely key. Curiosity, growth mindset are all the sort of things that you hear about. I mean, practically, how do you demonstrate that to me as a hiring manager? Well, talk to me about how you're learning, and don't just necessarily talk to me about product learning, by the way. I'm really interested in skills that you've developed outside of your professional life, so bring them into the interview as well. But yeah, if you're going to get some bonus points, then absolutely, people who care about the craft of product. And I'm not looking for chapter and verse on the books they've read, but showing me that you are interested in the craft of product and you are reading about it, you're keeping up to date because it's always changing. That also would suggest that you're going to do that in the business as well. So I like all of those things. So I think they would be the things that I'd look out for.
Yeah, I like that. I think a lot of PMs fall into the trap, and people in general fall into the trap of reading a job description and being like, I need those specific 5-7 things.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of it comes down to, and we've seen this, a lot of it comes down to the cultural side of things. Do you fit in
Yes,
the team?
absolutely.
Are you a team player?
Yes.
Do you communicate well? All the points you made there, really, I think are super, super vital.
Yeah, I mean, I think cultural fit. I think we get carried away with a good culture, but I think it's just finding whatever culture it is, whatever way you work, it's finding someone who fits in it. And I think that's why I think sometimes if you're a job seeker out there, and it's probably good to think about the fact that if it didn't quite work out, then it's okay. It wasn't necessarily you. It just that you just didn't fit, and that's okay. You've done the best you could. But yeah, I think all those things would be really important to me.
The market is obviously very competitive right now.
Yeah.
What overlooked or underemphasized skills might make someone stand out in this market?
That is a good question. I mean, I think that let's just assume all the basics are in place, right? So let's just assume that you have some great real examples of your achievements. Let's assume as well you've put in there some of your challenges. War stories go down great in the interview process. Something I'm a bit guilty of. I do tend to have a bias towards successes, but people crave failures, particularly how you've learned from them. So make sure they're. But I mean, assuming all they're there, then I think the other way to stand out would be to bring in more personal experiences. We touched on it a bit earlier, but something that really annoys me is so many candidates I've worked with over the years have like side hustles or great external experiences, and they never bring it in. A bit like you were saying earlier before, they look at the job spec and they kind of answer questions beyond it. But if you think about product, that entrepreneurial nature of product, somebody who can combine strategy and execution, somebody who can, influence, manage, or coordinate, those are skills that transcends your professional life. So I would love to see more people do that for sure. I think that would be, and I think people really miss a trick there. It's often something people are really passionate about as well. And when you see that passion come through, then that energy, that's really, really good. So I think that would be one of my main tips. Think about your personal experiences. Don't shy away from them. The other thing I would say, Ethan, and I said I didn't have any magic wands, and I didn't have any, but there's gonna be people right now that will hate me because this seems so incredibly obvious, but it still surprises me time and time again. You've got to learn about the company. It's incredibly frustrating when I've interviewed candidates who have not read our annual report, for example. I mean, it's so basic. Or just simply gone through the customer journey. So Simply Business is a provider of insurance services for small and medium enterprises. It's very simple there to set up a dummy quote journey. Really simple. And yet you'd be surprised the amount of people who didn't do it. At IG, we have a demo platform for people to do demo trades. And again, people wouldn't do it. It's the basics. And you'd be amazed how many people don't do it. Therefore, if you do it, you will stand out. So that is a simple hot take. Do the basics and you will stand out. I think those things would be the things I'd talk about.
Yeah, actually, I also mentioned the research, and I think as a recruiter, obviously, we have a lot of people in the interview process all the time. And that is definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the key reasons why people drop off after the first stage is going to the interview thinking, right, I've got product nailed, but haven't done any research on the company. And when the founder or whoever you're speaking to asks a question and you're there like, oh, I haven't looked at the product, I haven't tried it, I don't really know anything about the company, it just sounded interesting when I spoke to the recruiter. Those sorts of things, for us it's like, oh no.
Seriously,
really,
yeah.
It was a little bit of reading sort of thing. So to anyone interviewing out there, make sure you do research on the company you're interviewing for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it still happens at every level. So I was looking for work in the summer. Fortunate enough, I picked up a contract, but I went for an interview, a senior product leadership position, and I talked about some of the insights I gleaned from the annual report. And I was told I was the first person that had done that. And I was like, really? What? So, I mean, again, I just think you've got to do your basics.
Absolutely. And then coming on to the failure piece as well, I think, like you said, a lot of people fall into the trap of just wanting to hear about successes or just talking about success as well.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's an ego thing or whatever it is, but people don't like to touch on that topic. And I think, and it's that, right, it's a cliche for sure, but most of your learnings do come from the failures, right?
Yeah.
That's where you're on the hot seat and you really need to think properly and you're under a lot of pressure ultimately at that point, and getting out of a situation where things haven't gone the way you wanted them to is where I think real learnings and changes come from.
The more senior you get as well, what I'm looking for is that resilience. Product by its nature is a pretty tough gig. And you need to have a bit of a thick skin. So talking about your war stories, being comfortable about them as well, I think is really, really good. But you're right, it's actually not that easy to do. I mean, try it, deliberately think about great failures. It's pretty hard, but that'd be a good little technique actually for people who are going through a process.
100%. We've both seen this, but roles are getting a lot more niche. We touched on this very, very briefly at the start. How can a product manager demonstrate adaptability or relevant skills when their background might not be a perfect fit for a position?
Yeah, I mean, God, yeah, very topical. I mean, when did this happen, Ethan, right? I mean, there was a time not that long ago, well, not only were we hiring a lot, arguably too much, but we often were actively encouraging people from other skills and backgrounds. We wanted people to enhance various different industries with experience from other industries. But yeah, I'm definitely hearing this, that people want, and in fact, it becomes a bit of a list. They must have, expertise in this area. So I think it's a real challenge. And I think we should just be honest and call that out. I think, it is what it is at the moment. It's a difficult time. I suspect it'll probably flip back at some other point. But right now, I would say my advice to job seekers would be to think about first principles. So you might not have had direct experience of that, but you would have had direct experience of identifying and solving problems in a way that improves customer outcomes and align with business objectives, etc. You would have had to navigate some difficult stakeholders. You would have had to prioritize one thing over another. So I think these are the use cases you need to bring out. I think there are common threads through every role, and it's for you to think of those threads and think of the relevant threads for that role. And I would argue that actually this is where you guys can play a part. Actually, you guys are working with the client. You know potentially where they're going in terms of the role, what they're looking for. I think this is where you can help the candidates help emphasize, not embellish, we're not talking about making stuff up, but actually bring to light those important aspects that we know will resonate with the hiring manager.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we do things the way we do. Like, we've obviously spoken on a few occasions now, and the way we do things at Waves, we'll set up sort of a 30-minute video call. There's a different sort of human interaction as the video call versus the phone call, but we take the time to really dive into someone's experience and find out exactly what they were doing in each role, where their strengths lie, etc., so that we can then present the candidate in the best possible way to the client. Ultimately, ourselves that we write for candidates are what get people that first stage interview in a lot of cases. Because a CV, it's good, but then having someone back up and be like, look, I've spoken to this person for half an hour, 40 minutes, I've met them, I know they've done X, X, and X, and they will be able to do Y, 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 it's worth a call. And I think that's a major part of our job, is making sure we're selling the candidates, making sure we're actually pushing them in. And 90% of the time, that first stage, if they get it, will translate into a second. Yeah,
I think that's, and that I guess is perhaps the downside at the moment by being so specific about certain industry specifics, they're missing out on great candidates. So I think this is where help and support to bridge that gap. Again, you're not making stuff up, you're not embellishing, you're just bringing out those key elements. Because in some cases, I suspect, you correct me if I'm wrong, the hiring manager doesn't necessarily know that actually there is, similar product experiences between those industries. They've been given a brief. They obviously think that, subject matter expertise is the most important thing, but actually in our profession, that isn't always the case.
In many cases, it's less industry. We've spoken to a lot of people lately who are really relaxed about people coming from other industries, but it's, you have to have worked in, I've seen some that have been like, you have to have worked in AI machine learning space for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if we're saying 5 years, there's a small handful of people that have been in that space for 5 years. Yeah. There's a lot who've done it for 2 or 3 years, who are really good at it, and they're worth talking to. There's very few who've been in it for 5 years. Yeah. And then there's also, I guess you already kind of touched on this, but product's so transferable. It really is. Maybe there's 1 or 2 industries that it would be difficult to enter and really hit the ground running. But in most cases, B2C, B2B, variety of different industries, it's quite easy to come in and establish yourself pretty quick and learn what's going on pretty quick. As far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I can give you working examples of people who made a difference in organisations that didn't have a trading background or didn't have an insurance background. So yes, absolutely. Now there is a learning curve, and I think you do need to quickly demonstrate that you are addressing it. But yeah, it absolutely can be done.
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to touch on with this niche thing is a lot of hiring managers know there are a lot of people in the market. Yeah. They know there's an abundance of talent, for example, and they're willing to wait that extra few months for the right person. And that makes our job difficult in a sense, because if we're talking to a really solid candidate, the likelihood is they're in 3 or 4 other processes, and those processes are moving quick. Right? And we don't want to be creating a situation where people are interviewing for a month or 2 months, because they're going to be off the market in that time. They're not going to be around for that long. So for hiring managers, it's worth being slightly more open-minded to speaking with a variety of candidates in some cases.
Good. Well, hopefully they're listening to you, because I think we'd all appreciate perhaps a loosening of some of those entry requirements. And go back to, again, I think we got to reflect that things have changed, and I don't think things won't be the way they were, but I think at the moment it's not suiting anybody. I think it's just not enough liquidity in the market that we both need as job seekers and recruiters.
Agreed, 100%. Fine, now looking back, would you say there are any unconventional or creative approaches to job searching and networking that you've seen work particularly well for professionals?
Creative. I don't know. I'm not sure. I personally was a pretty regular job seeker, and I'm talking a bit more about my experience in a moment. I know that there's a lot of talk at the moment around groups, looking for jobs in groups and creating support groups and things like that. And I think that's something definitely worth looking into. I was aware of a number of people who are reaching out directly to CEOs of organisations, telling them that they're available, or in relation to vacancies and things like that. So I mean, whatever you want to do to try and get an edge, I think is all up for you. I mean, my own personal experience, I don't think it was unconventional or creative. I just really embraced my network. So I was looking for my new role sort of just before the summer, and I found myself just basically putting myself out there to my network. And I guess I'm fortunate, so this might not be applicable to everybody. I've been in this space for a long time, so I know a lot of people. But I was really open to what that might bring. And that's probably worth talking about, actually. I was saying, guys, I'm up for whatever. I passionately believe as a product person, there are lots of tools in my toolkit. I can talk about strategy, commercial leadership. I can talk about delivery and execution. I can talk about customer research and proposition development. So I'm open and was open to any of those things. And actually it paid off. And it was a friend of a friend who contacted me with a data and technology company that wanted to scale. And I've been working that contract now for about 6 weeks. And arguably, that's not strictly product, actually. It's the company is the product, and they're asking me about how we transform that company. Yesterday, I was working with the solicitors about how we incorporate in different territories. We're currently working with some compliance people, and we're looking to scale our infrastructure. I mean, these aren't typical product things, but I was open to it, and we liked each other, and it's been great. And I'm very grateful to be working. But so for me, again, probably not the most exciting way. I'm sure there are people out there that have some really cool techniques or use AI or something. But for me, I just was really open with my network and open about the opportunities it might bring.
I think that is such an important point. The network point is one of the key things I've been advising to people and speaking to people about over the last few months. If you've got a big network, use it.
Yeah.
Reach out to people. Speak to people you've worked with before. Speak to people you know that can recommend you into places. I mean, it's one of the best. Having a warm introduction to a company, be like, I have worked with Ben. He can do this brilliantly. Yeah. Even if there's not a role there, it might be worth still setting up a conversation. We've seen roles come out of thin air so many times in this sort of instance. I think people really undervalue the use of network. Your network, particularly on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen it work wonders for people, especially at leadership level as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and this wasn't really a chore, right? I had some time on my hands. A number of people wanted to talk to me about how you might structure, manage, develop a product organization. So I was more than happy to meet for coffees. I appreciate not everybody's in the same situation. I was very fortunate. I had some time, but yeah, those things have led to other opportunities as well. So embrace the network and embrace what you can do. I think it's a real shame if people. It's great that product has become so advanced, but it's kind of a shame that we at the same time our advancement has made us quite narrow. People are like, well, I do product. And actually, product is an amalgamation of various different skills. So I think you should be, a friend of mine the other day was saying, if you're a product leader, you could also be a CEO or an MD, and I think people need to, particularly at a senior level, need to think outside their box.
We spoke about that the other week, didn't we? We were talking about there are so many skills you acquire as a product leader that's transferable into, growth roles, strategy roles, like you say, MD roles, etc. There's so many doors that it opens, and I think people are worried to leave the product title in fear of what it will look like if they ever try to move back into standard product management on their CV at some point, or LinkedIn, or whatever, however that reflects. And people are scared of that, and they shouldn't be, because you're still using your product knowledge, you're still pretty much doing a product role and gaining loads more experience. That's invaluable to product management when you do come back to proper products, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I'm really glad you've said that that's the case. I think it's about the story you tell, and if you can show that there's those product skills in that new role, then I think it makes absolute sense. So yeah, I'm glad you agree. Keep your options open.
One other question that just popped in my head.
Yeah.
Have you, as a product leader, seen the expectations of hiring managers change? I've probably got some context to add to this.
Right.
Actually, let me go with it first. There's been for me,
Yeah.
there's been a change in what a normal product organisation looks like, or a product org within a company looks like,
Yeah.
right? I think 2022, start 2023, is very common to see, and we spoke about this, 6-7 layers of product management
Yeah.
business, CPO, VP, product directors, groups, leads, etc. Right, and now there's been a real condensing, I suppose, of those teams, and now it's very common to see 3, maybe 4 layers within a business. So, for example, CPO, let's say a 500-person company, CPO, 4 or 5 head of products,
Yep.
and then a layer of really high-performing ICs
Yep.
below those head of products. And then the expectation is also now that the head of products, product directors, will have some hands on it. It will not be that pure management role we saw in the past. It will not be that fully hands-off, just strategical role, but you'll have maybe your own development team and still be working on that side of things. Have you seen that shift as well? Is that something you've seen?
I haven't personally. I mean, I'm hearing it. So I think it resonates. It makes a lot of sense. I guess where I'm slightly conflicted there is this idea that individuals aren't connected to the teams anyway. I mean, that shouldn't have happened, and I probably feel I should be supportive and defending my senior product leaders out there.
Yeah.
You know, I think we would always stay close to the ground and connected. But there have been organisations where they have gone very, very big, and then it's just physically not possible because we have been tasked with growing functions, and so we're constantly growing, we're constantly recruiting. But I think you do ultimately need to stay close to those teams. So I think the expectation makes sense. I'm just challenging why it wasn't happening in the first place, or why people feel. And if it was, I don't think it was these leaders' faults. They're possibly just being given a different task. Their task was to grow. But yeah, I'm hearing similar things on the grapevine. And I guess then if we sort of put that, if we flip that around and think about what it means to be a job seeker, I think, you know, when I was having conversations, people were asking me to demonstrate my ability to get my hands dirty, you know, and I think that's just a key one. And actually doing a contract at the moment where I'm the only person who isn't a data scientist or an engineer, so I'm picking up everything. Actually, it's a great experience for me, and it proves that I can do that. I think, by the way, there's a lot of senior product leads out there that would love to get their hands dirty. I don't think they're, you know, I just want to be very clear. I don't think there's many going, oh no, I'd like to just sit and work on budgets and location strategies. I think many of them would love this. But I guess the challenge that you're going to present me with is how do you then prove that you can do that? And I think working contracts, doing side hustles, things that show that you can, that you've still got the chops to be able to manage teams and work directly with people, I think is really key.
100%. I've spoken to so many product leaders in the last 6 to 12 months that have been like, I'm desperate to get back into some sort of hands-on capacity.
Yeah.
I want to get stuck in again. And then you've seen a lot of heads of products, product directors move into principal roles, into lead roles, where like, well, you know, maybe on my CV this looks like a step down, but it's really not. I want to get back in the back in the trade and really. And I also want to say, as a recruiter, I do not look at a profile that's gone from head of product down to a product lead and think, oh, they're taking a step back. I think that's someone who didn't want to be managing, wanted to get back stuck in sort of thing. So it's not a negative at all. And it's definitely a demand I've seen a lot of for people more recently, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think it goes back to our earlier point about being open, using this time to really think about what you want to do, and it, you know, taking other roles, other titles. But yeah, I think you're onto something. I think being more hands-on, coach plus hands-on figure is definitely a theme.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, doing things on the side, whether it's starting your own business or doing a contract, etc., that's a great way to prove that you can still do that, and also your hands warm again, right?
Yeah.
And make sure that is what you want to be doing before diving into a full-time position doing it again.
Yeah, like you say, and it's interesting you provide that feedback. I'm clearly not alone. I think a lot of people welcome the opportunity to solve problems again and not necessarily build organisations.
Nice. One of the last questions I want to ask you
Go on.
around AI.
Okay.
In particular, have you seen product management change at all with the advancements of AI, ChatGPT?
I'm seeing its use, but as a tool. So I'm seeing product people utilize AI for research purposes, for example. I'm seeing it. We experimented, a quick plug, we experimented with a tool called Chat PRD, which actually helps shape some of our product requirement documents. I'm still seeing it though as a side tool. I'm not seeing it as fundamental. Clearly though, I mean, the ability to take away some of the pain and legwork around research analysis, I think would be absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of legwork that goes into that. And when you think about back in, was it 2007 or so, when Kagan came out with Transformed, and he talked about how, a product manager had to work between, all the hours God send because it was such a busy job and stuff like that. And I'd like to think that if AI could come along and take some of that heavy lifting away, we could actually spend more time with customers solving problems. So I think it's great. I mean, we've touched a lot on job seeking today. I think today is a really good opportunity for those of you out there looking to start messing about with some of those tools, using them in your side hustles, in your personal life. You don't want to be the person who starts a new gig and then introduces a new technique or a tool for the very first time, right? Everybody, before you run that OKR workshop, you'll have practiced it a few times. You've gone through your template. Before you do your opportunity tree, you would have practiced it, right? And it's the same for AI tooling. You wouldn't just try it out. I think now would be a great time to experiment with some of those tools. And there seems to be a real buzz as well, right? It's all in the communities, all in the WhatsApp groups. As these tools that help people, it still fundamentally doesn't change the nature of product, but actually as a supporting tool, I think it'd be great. So yeah, get stuck in, use it when you've got time, but don't forget the principles of product. I don't think it's going to kill product, by the way. I still think there's a role for this profession, but hopefully a much better role, because we don't have some of the burden that these can take away.
Comes back to human nature, right? That's the important part. I think product isn't product without the human element.
Yes.
And AI, if we let it do the job of a product manager, probably wouldn't have that human element.
I would argue. I think you're right. Yeah.
Cool. Well, look, I hope we've added a lot of value today. Obviously, the premise was to come on here and hopefully add some value to your job search. Help understand that the market isn't as bad as it seems and it is on the up. I'm quite optimistic about 2025 across the board. I think you're starting to feel a bit more optimistic about it as well.
Definitely, yeah.
And yeah, best of luck, and we'll see you next time.